They know that Epstein trafficked young women for sex to himself. They want to know who, if anyone else, he trafficked these young women to.
Senator John Kennedy stepped into the exchange and did something that instantly shifted the atmosphere. No legal jargon, no winding preamble, just a direct, unfiltered question aimed squarely at the center of the controversy. He looked across at FBI Director Kash Patel and asked what millions of Americans have been wondering, but few officials have stated plainly. Did someone order you to bury the Epstein files? There was no cushioning around it, no procedural framing, just a yes or no question hanging in the air. For a split second before any words were spoken, Patel's reaction said more than a prepared statement ever could. A flicker of hesitation, a glance. Then his attorney leaned in, whispering quickly. It was brief, but in high-stakes hearings, brief moments can define the entire narrative. That pause is the part people will replay, not just the question, the silence before the answer. Stay with this, because what followed didn't feel like the end of a controversy. It felt like the opening move in something far larger. The Senate Judiciary Committee reconvened for its afternoon session, the kind of Washington ritual that usually fades into background noise. Budget allocations, staffing levels, dry procedural exchanges that rarely travel beyond the Beltway. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana sat near the far end of the dais, listening. For those unfamiliar with him, Kennedy defies the standard template. A graduate of Vanderbilt, the University of Virginia School of Law, and Oxford, he often speaks with a Louisiana drawl thick enough to sound homespun. But the accent masks a razor-edged precision. When he chooses to cut, he does it cleanly. He waited through nearly 90 minutes of bureaucratic back and forth. FBI Director Kash Patel fielded questions smoothly: cybersecurity threats, Chinese intelligence operations, Russian disinformation. Each answer was disciplined, controlled, calibrated to inform without revealing too much, professional, composed, carefully non-committal. It was standard oversight choreography until Kennedy leaned forward. Patel appeared composed, even casual. At one point, he glanced at his watch. Twice, he looked relaxed. That may have been the first miscalculation. Senator Kennedy was recognized at 3:47 p.m. Eastern. The timestamp matters because what followed would be clipped, replayed, and dissected within hours. Director Patel, Kennedy began, his voice unhurried, deliberate, slow enough that every word felt placed rather than spoken. I want to talk to you about Jeffrey Epstein. The air in the room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Conversations in the back stopped. Staffers looked up. That low electrical current that runs through a hearing when everyone senses the temperature rising, it was there. Patel's face remained composed. He had navigated Epstein questions before. He knew the language. Senator, Patel replied, measured and professional. As I've stated in prior testimony, the FBI conducted a thorough investigation into Mr. Epstein's activities. I'm not interested in your previous testimony, Kennedy cut in. His tone hadn't accelerated. He wasn't louder, but something harder had entered it, a firmness beneath the politeness. The script had just been set aside. I'm interested in what you're not telling us. Patel blinked, once. Then again. Kennedy opened a blue folder, thick, maybe 40 pages, but he didn't flip through it. He simply rested his hand on top, as if anchoring the moment. Director Patel, how many documents related to Jeffrey Epstein are currently in the possession of the FBI? Patel shifted slightly. That would be difficult to quantify, Senator. The investigation generated substantial... I didn't ask for an essay, Kennedy interrupted, still calm. I asked for a number. Approximately how many documents? A brief glance from Patel toward his attorneys, both in dark suits, both visibly tense. Without reviewing our internal systems, Patel replied carefully, I couldn't provide an accurate figure. Kennedy didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You're the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, he said, and you're telling me you don't know, even roughly, how many Epstein-related files your agency holds? I'm saying that without proper context. Patel began. Kennedy leaned forward slightly. Let me give you some context then. According to a Freedom of Information Act request my office filed 6 months ago, Kennedy continued, the FBI is currently withholding approximately 2,300 documents connected to the Epstein investigation. Does that figure sound about right? He didn't rush the silence. 5 seconds. Then 10. Patel finally gave a restrained nod. That number is within a general range, Senator. Kennedy moved immediately. Of those 2,300 documents, how many have been released to the public? A limited number have been released following appropriate redaction procedures to protect. I didn't ask about procedures, Kennedy said, still measured. I asked how many. Patel's jaw set. A small exhale. Approximately 90 documents have been released in redacted form. 90. Kennedy repeated it softly. He let the math do the work. Out of 2,300. A pause. That's roughly 4%, Director Patel. 4%. So tell me, what's in the other 96% that the American people aren't permitted to see? The question didn't need volume. It carried its own weight. Those documents contain sensitive information related to ongoing investigations, national security concerns, and the privacy interests of individuals who have not been. I'm going to stop you right there. Kennedy's hand lifted slightly. Not aggressive, not dramatic, just a small motion, like a traffic officer slowing a car at an intersection. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. The primary case is closed. So what ongoing investigation are you protecting? For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, Patel shifted in his seat. A subtle adjustment, but noticeable. There are ancillary matters that remain under review, he replied carefully. Ancillary matters. Kennedy smiled, not warmly. It was the measured smile of someone who senses an opening. Director Patel, I'm a simple country lawyer, he said. Went to LSU, practiced law in Louisiana for years before I got into this mess called politics. So help me understand something. He leaned forward slightly. If the main investigation is concluded, and the principal subjects are either deceased or incarcerated, what exactly are these ancillary matters you're referring to? The word lingered in the air, suddenly heavier than when Patel first used it. And more importantly, Kennedy pressed, who are they protecting? Senator, I can't discuss the specifics of ongoing FBI operations in an open setting, Patel replied. Kennedy nodded slowly, not frustrated, not surprised. It was the nod of someone who had anticipated that exact wall. Fair enough, he said. Let me try a different angle. He opened the blue folder and removed a single sheet. Since you became FBI Director, how many Epstein-related documents have been reclassified from public to restricted status? I'm not aware of any systematic reclassification, Patel answered. You're not aware. Kennedy slid the paper forward slightly. This is an internal FBI memorandum dated February 8th of this year, roughly 2 months after you took office. It's marked for official use only. My office obtained it through proper channels. He lifted it just enough for the cameras to catch the header. Would you like me to read what it says? Both of Patel's attorneys leaned in at once. A quick whisper, a subtle exchange. Patel gave the smallest shake of his head. Senator, without reviewing the specific document you're referencing. But Kennedy had already begun reading. Quote, Kennedy read steadily. Following director-level review, the following materials previously cleared for potential FOIA release have been redesignated as law enforcement sensitive and removed from the release queue. End quote. He lowered the page and looked directly at Patel. Director Patel, this memo lists 47 documents. 47 documents that were on track for public release until you became director. And now they're back under restriction. Why? Patel answered carefully. Those redesignation decisions were based on updated risk assessments and consultation with updated risk assessments. Kennedy placed the memo on the desk in front of him. Not slammed, not theatrically, just set down with intent. Director, these materials were already reviewed, multiple times, by career FBI agents, by Department of Justice attorneys, by classification professionals. They were cleared for release. He leaned forward slightly. Then you took office, and suddenly they're too sensitive for the American people to see. The implication didn't need to be spelled out. The timeline spoke for itself. What changed? Kennedy asked. The methodology for assessing potential harm evolved based on... Patel began. I'm going to ask you a direct question, Kennedy said quietly. His voice had dropped, which somehow made it sharper. And I'd appreciate a direct answer. A pause. Did anyone outside the FBI ask you to reclassify those 47 documents? Standard interagency coordination occurs on various matters. Did anyone from the White House communicate with you about the Epstein files? Kennedy pressed. There are routine discussions between agencies, Senator. That's not what I asked. Another beat. Did anyone from Donald Trump's legal team contact you about those files? I don't recall any specific... The FBI director doesn't get to not recall, Kennedy cut in, still composed. This isn't a casual phone call. These are documents connected to one of the most scrutinized criminal cases in modern history. He leaned forward. It's a simple yes or no. Did anyone associated with Donald Trump ask you to restrict access to the Epstein files? The question hung there, stripped of qualifiers, stripped of escape routes. Patel's face shifted in rapid succession, confusion, irritation, calculation, and then settled back into a carefully constructed neutrality. My decisions regarding document classification, he said, measured and deliberate, are based solely on my assessment of national security and law enforcement interests, not on any external pressure from any individual or organization. That's not what I asked. The silence that followed was absolute. Reporters stopped typing, staffers froze mid-note, even the usual rustle of paper disappeared. This was no longer routine oversight. The exchange had crossed into something heavier. Kennedy tried again, his tone almost patient now. The calm of someone narrowing the question to remove every possible exit. Let me ask it this way, he said. In the 6 months since you became FBI director, have you had any communication, direct or indirect, with anyone connected to Donald Trump regarding the handling, classification, or release of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein? Patel chose his words carefully. I communicate with many individuals in the course of my official duties. It wasn't an answer. It was a perimeter. That's still not a yes or no, Director Patel. It's simple. Have you spoken with anyone connected to Trump about the Epstein files? Patel glanced at his attorneys. Neither looked comfortable. Senator, I would need to review my communication logs to give a complete... Your logs? Kennedy's eyebrows lifted. You need records to remember if you discussed Jeffrey Epstein? The room tightened. I can recall every conversation I've had about Epstein this year. There weren't many. It's not small talk. You're telling me you don't know whether you spoke with Trump's people about these files? Patel leaned on process. In the normal course of interagency coordination, Kennedy stood up, slowly, deliberately. He never does that in hearings. His voice stayed calm but harder now. Director Patel, I've been patient. I've been courteous, Kennedy said, his voice steady but sharpened. Now I'm going to be clear because the public deserves clarity. He lifted another sheet of paper. This is a call record. February 23rd, 10:47 p.m. A call from your personal cell to a New York firm, Kasowitz Benson Torres. Do you recognize who they represent? Patel's color drained instantly. I speak with many attorneys in the course of my duties. Director, Kennedy cut in, that firm represents Donald Trump, and this record shows a 17-minute call, 3 weeks after you took office, 2 days before 47 Epstein files were pulled back from release. He placed the paper down carefully, almost gently. So I'll ask again. Did anyone connected to Trump request that those Epstein documents be withheld? The chamber fell into a suffocating stillness. 15 seconds, though it felt longer. Long enough to watch calculation flicker behind Patel's eyes. Long enough for every camera in the room to zoom in. Long enough for a carefully constructed defense to begin cracking in plain view.